Hello everyone, and welcome to the Addon software session. I'm Chris Hawkins, one of the Addon developers here at Basis, and today I'll be showing you some of the enhancements that are of interest to both our reseller and end-user communities. Here's what we'll cover. We'll explore Addon's new Git-based architecture and see how that factors into installations, upgrades, and customizations. After that, we'll circle back and talk just a little bit more about Addon's packager extractor utility. Next, you'll see our new certified integration with Avalara's AvaTax product for calculating sales tax. And finally, we'll take a fresh look at the mobile inventory counting app with an end-to-end demo of how it improves efficiency and accuracy. Let's get started. Our first topic is Git-based Addon, where Addon now harnesses the power of Git for Addon software installs, customizations, and upgrades. Those processes are now Git-based. We'll talk a bit about what we did, why, what it means for you, and then we'll go through some demos of those new processes. The Addon software repository is hosted up on GitHub. New installs and upgrades create local Git clones. Before we get too much further then, in case you're not familiar with Git, what is it? Well, it's a widely used, probably one of the most widely used version control systems in use today. And what's a clone? Well, that's really Git speak for a complete local copy of a Git repository, including all of the versions and commit history. In terms of what we did, let's start with a little background. Previous installs and upgrades of Addon were just a flat copy, just a copy of the Addon program files. That presented a challenge for customizing and upgrading in terms of keeping track of things. So Barista was modified with a special mods project, a special mode, so that it would store customizations to Addon off in a separate file structure. That whole process was overhauled as part of the recent Basis QFP, our quality focus period. The installs and the upgrades are now Git clones. And you can do your customizations directly in the Addon file structure. You don't need that mods project anymore. And we have a brand new Addon packager and extractor that facilitates moving instances of Addon from and to test and production servers. Why did we do all this? Well, primarily because it eliminates disadvantages of the prior mods project model. You could only create one mods project. That made it hard if you did multiple sorts of mods for multiple customers. When you were working with a mods project, you had to continually be aware of whether application replication mode was turned on or off. That mode was what told Barista to save your changes out in the mods project file structure. You had to deal differently with call points. You had to copy and paste chunks of Addon code into before, after, or instead of call points in your project file structure. You had to manually copy-paste backend code, reports, updates, and such into your project structure if you wanted to customize those. And with all of that, we still had a separate manual process to examine the call point and backend code and merge it in to a newer version. It was that separate manual process that brought Git onto the scene and was the idea behind making the whole install and upgrade process, along with customizations, take more advantage of Git. What does all this mean for you? The customization and upgrade processes are much less cumbersome and error-prone. You don't have to toggle replication mode on and off. You're not worried about copy-pasting code, leaving things out. And we have also made sure that an upgrade from a non-Git instance, if you're upgrading from an older version, we've given you a bridge to get to the new Git-based versions. The first upgrade from a non-Git-based instance will automatically analyze your mods project and incorporate those changes directly into the newer Git-based Addon structure. That means you can now customize directly in Addon and let Git manage the hard stuff, right? With Git, you can view logs of everything we've committed and things that you have committed also to customize the application. You can diff any of the files to see exactly what has changed and by whom and when. If you decide you don't like a particular change that you've made, you can revert those changes and so on. All of the version control capabilities are there to help you manage your customizations. Not only that, but given those customizations under Git's control, Git can then reapply them after an upgrade. When it comes to conflicts, you will usually have some, especially on the first upgrade. Second and subsequent upgrades are faster. You won't run into typically as many conflicts on second and subsequent upgrades. And last but not least, you have the flexibility when working with Git to create forks of the add-on repository or individual clones so that you can use those facets of Git to accommodate multiple sets of mods for multiple customers. All right, with that said, let's take a look at a quick demo of how the install process works. We've just installed a fresh copy of BBJ Barista and Addon. Let's launch Addon so that we can run the installation wizard. We provide a little bit of information to the installation wizard. Our install location, the name that we'd like to assign to the new database, and a description. And we'll also be filling out some information about the new firm that we want to set up. And then we click Run. That's all the installation needs. The first thing that it will do is go to GitHub and create a Git clone of the add-on repository. Once we have the clone in place, then we'll copy Barista up from the download location. Update a few files, and then we'll synchronize Addon into Barista. We'll flesh out the dictionary, and then we'll go on to create our forms and compile our call points, and finish setting up our new firm, and our process is complete. That's all there is to getting a new installation. On the surface, that's really no different than the install wizard you may already be familiar with. But let's bring up our File Explorer and take a look at our file structure. Here in our TC21 directory, we locate our AON, that's our add-on, install. I'm running on Windows, so I have Tortoise Git installed on top of File Explorer, which gives me all of the options I need to manage my install. Let's just take a quick look at our Git log. We can see here the tag that marks our release, and then up a little ways we'll see this post-install commit. Those are commits that the installer did for us because it changed some files. A double click lets me bring up a diff of the file, and we can see that we changed the path name. Our install is now Git-based and ready to take on some customizations. All right, moving on, let's run the customization demo. We've made some customizations to our Git-based install. I'm going into Form Manager, and we'll bring up the Customer Master. You can see in the Form Designer that we have a new description field at the bottom right, and we also added just a little bit of call point code for that field that will pop a message box and show us what's in the field when we tab out of it. Let's launch the customer form, make sure it's working the way we want. Here's our new description field. I'll go into edit mode, click in, and then just tab out of the field, and there's our message box. It's a simple customization, but we've been able to do it directly in Addon because of this Git-based install. Given our new description field, we've also added it to the customer name and address listing. Last but not least, I'm going into Form Manager again. We used the Barista Create Application Wizard to make an entirely new project that I've called Addon Supplements. We have a brand new table in this project. This is not a customization to something that exists in Addon, but an entirely new table where we can gather some miscellaneous customer information. We've put that new form in the menu right here under the customer form. All right, given those customizations, what does Git make of all of this? Let's navigate back to our project. Now the AON directory has a red exclamation point. That's Tortoise Git's way of telling us that we've changed some files. The Git Check for Modifications option shows the list of what has changed, along with some new, currently unversioned files that weren't previously known to Git. Up at the top here, we see our name and address report, the XMLs associated with the tables and forms we changed, and the call point CDF. A double click on any of these, as you now know, will let us examine exactly what we changed. We can see here where we added the test description to our report. And likewise, in the CDF, we see that we added that little snippet of code to pop our message dialog. Now, the XMLs are a little bit different. These, of course, aren't program code. They're generated and used by Barista, so won't be as meaningful when examined by the human eye. You're free to diff these if you like, but you won't need to deal with possible conflicts in them during the upgrade like you may have to with actual source code files. The upgrade will take the XMLs from the new version and use the Barista Install Application Wizard to interpret and incorporate the XML changes. And we also have just 2 files here that are from adding our new form to the menu. Now, a quick aside here, if you've done much form building in Barista, you know that every time you build a form, Barista also creates the associated ARC file. You can see here, if we go into the ARC directory, that the ARC file was changed. So why doesn't it show up in the list of modified files? Since Barista builds the ARC, it's not anything we ever modify directly. There's really no point in committing it to the repository. So we've told Git to ignore changes in the ARC files, as well as a few other kinds of files that we don't need to track. Okay, then we'll do a click and then a shift click to select the files we want to commit, right click, and commit. You always want to commit your work back to the clone so Git knows what should be reapplied during an upgrade. We'll put in the commit message and scan through the list to double check what we're committing, including those 2 that were new. They will become versioned from now on. The indicator on our clone has gone back to a green check mark, signaling that our working directory is once again clean. We're all caught up with our commits. If I right-click again, we can take a final look at the Git log. Here's the commit that we just made, including the commit message and all the files associated with the commit. Once again, you can double-click on any of them and get right back to a diff showing you exactly what was changed. Okay, given these customizations, let's take them through an upgrade. Upgrades, understandably, are a bit more complex, and we make use of a 2-server model so that we can upgrade on a new server, totally out of the way of the current production instance, and then bring our upgraded instance back to production when we're ready to go live. Let's see how that works. We've customized Addon, and now we'd like to do an upgrade. To do that, we'll install a copy of our current production add-on on a test server, and it's on that server where we'll do the upgrade and test it so that we don't interfere with the current production version. Once we're satisfied that everything looks good, we'll copy that upgraded and tested instance back to our live server and put it into production. We begin by launching the demo instance of Addon that's in the BBJ home directory and use Addon's new packager Extractor to create an archive of the instance that we want to upgrade. We'll select the testing use option so that we can copy data as well as our application and specify the base or top-level directory from which it should start creating the archive. Once our archive is completed, we'll copy it over to our testing system, where we'll go right back into the packager Extractor to install it. This time, we select the Extractor tab, specify an install location and database name, and browse to or type in the name of the archive that the packager created. Extractor will not only put our copy of Addon in place, but will also change path names and update the barista.config file so you don't have to do all that manually. The Extractor will also create an entry for you here in the Barista Install Manager grid. That gets our old instance in place. To start the upgrade now, we go to the demo instance of Addon and run Addon's upgrade wizard. We need to specify a database name and location for our new instance, and also point it to the instance we're upgrading from. That's the instance we just copied over and synced in. In the middle grid, we're also telling it to copy over and install the supplemental application that holds our new customer miscellaneous form. And we'll take a minute to review the target paths and correct any if need be, then start the upgrade. As Git moves up to the new version and attempts to cherry-pick changes from the old version, you may run into conflicts. If you do, you'll need to stop and resolve them before you can continue. Here we've resolved our conflicts, and in the Git log we can see that Git has now successfully cherry-picked our customizations from the old version onto the new version branch. We're ready then to restart the upgrade wizard, and it will pick up where it left off. We can double-click here to preload all of our previous selections so we don't have to re-enter them. The upgrade will continue on with the usual barista synchronization process, fleshing out the dictionary and building forms. Once the sync is done, the wizard automatically moves on and launches the barista install application wizard to install our customized forms, incorporating the changes we made in the XML files. Remember, I told you you won't have to manually worry about the XMLs. The install application wizard manages those for you. Once that's done, the install wizard will repeat for any other projects or verticals we specified when setting up the upgrade. In our case, it'll install our add-on supplements project. Finally, the upgrade commits any files that it has changed, and we're done with the application part of the upgrade. Now, if this upgrade involved structural changes to any of our data tables, then this is the point when we run the Enterprise Manager Update Wizard to do a dictionary-based copy of the data from our old to our new instance. Let's launch that new instance, let it finish its post-conversion processing, and then we can confirm that our customizations are in place. We'll start with a customer form. Our test description is here, so we'll go into edit mode and enter and then tab out. And there's our message box, so we're all good there. We have our new form in the menu, and that looks good too. And finally, we can check out our name and address listing and confirm that our test descriptions are in place. All right, we've completed the upgrade on the test server, and now we want to bundle it up and go back the other direction. We want to take it back over and install it on our production server. We'll launch the packager again, this time selecting the production use option because we want to create an archive of the new application but leave the data behind since we've been using it for testing. Okay, we've dropped our new archive on the production server. So once again, we want to extract it. Remember, the packaging and extracting is always done from the demo instance of Addon. Provide the location where you want to install the new instance, along with the database name, and then point it to the archive and tell it to extract. Our newly extracted instance is here in the Install Manager grid. So once again, we can run the Enterprise Manager Update Wizard to copy our production data this time over to the upgraded instance. And then we'll launch and let it run through any post-upgrade conversions. So in a nutshell, that is how the new Git-based add-on software model works. As we said, it eliminates the disadvantages of the older mods project model. The upgrade and customization processes, therefore, are less cumbersome, less error-prone, less time spent copy-pasting things back and forth, correcting mistakes. And remember, your first upgrade from your non-Git instance where you're using a mods project to a Git-based instance will automatically incorporate your mods project for you. And after that, you can customize directly in Addon and let Git track your changes as you do customizations and as you go through upgrades. You were introduced to the packager Extractor in the previous demo. I want to tell you a bit more about it here. As you learned a few minutes ago, the packager Extractor's job is to facilitate moving an instance of Addon along with the barista framework. The packager Extractor ships with Addon as of version 21. The packager bundles up an instance into a platform-independent archive, and the Extractor then unpacks and installs an archive created by the packager. The packager furthermore lets you specify a test or production archive. A test archive includes all of the requisite files from the top-level installation or base directory, including data files, and creates an instance that's ready to launch and run. A production archive, on the other hand, just bundles up barista, add-on, and customization or vertical projects, if applicable, omitting the data files, and as the name implies, would be primarily used in a production environment when going live with an upgrade where you want to supply a fresh copy of the data. We demonstrated both the packager and extractor in the last session. We packaged for test, extracted that package on a test server to perform an upgrade. Once we were ready to go live, we packaged the upgraded instance for production, again, leaving behind the data that we had used for testing, and then extracted it back on the production server in preparation for the go live. So the packager extractor is obviously an integral part of the add-on upgrade process. But what I want to emphasize here is that the packager extractor's usefulness goes beyond doing add-on upgrades. You may want to create a copy of an instance on the same or different server to use for development or testing. You may want to relocate an existing instance in order to swap out servers or move from ground to cloud, that sort of thing. And what makes this utility so nice is that it not only does the physical packing and unpacking, but when extracting, it also changes path names in the config, dictionary, and other files to reference the new instance, creates the new database, session-specific class path, and Sprock definitions. So you don't have to worry about doing all of that manually and possibly missing a step. Now, this is a packed session, so rather than doing a demo now, here's a link to a YouTube video where you can watch a roughly 10-minute presentation that goes into more detail on the packager extractor. One of the other big enhancements in Addon is our integration with Avalara. Avalara, if you aren't familiar with them, provides a range of sales tax, compliance, and calculation services. Pretty much if you sell anything anywhere, the South Dakota versus Wayfair decision is something you've probably heard of, and it very likely impacts your business. That decision changed the way nexus is determined, such that you no longer have to have a physical presence in a state to be expected to collect sales tax there. You may have nexus based on either a dollar amount or a number of transactions or a combination thereof. The new laws are, not surprisingly, complicated and differ from state to state. You may be struggling to manage the new laws or even just ignoring them in the hopes that no auditors will come knocking at your door. Obviously, neither of those situations are optimal. We're excited to announce that Addon has earned Avalara's certification for the AvaTax sales tax service, and we'll show you how seamless that integration is. You can process your orders and invoices and not worry about the tax. AvaTax can bear the burden of figuring out what's taxable where. Of course, you could, as a reseller or end user, decide that you can manage all of this on your own, but do you really want to keep up with tax rates for various goods and services across some 13,000 jurisdictions? If you want to use AvaTax, you'll need to get set up, both with AvaTax and in Addon. With AvaTax, you'll start with a sandbox account that's used while you're testing, and then you'll switch to a regular account once you're ready to go live. Once you have an account, you provide some information about your company and where you currently collect tax. On the add-on side, you'll turn on the service in the order processing parameters and configure your connection information. You'll also designate which of your add-on tax codes will use the AvaTax service, so you have the option to use the service for some codes and not others. It's not an all-or-nothing switch. You'll set up which of the AvaTax product and service tax codes apply to you, whether you do that at the individual item level or for an entire product category. And if you deal with exempt customers, you can enter their exemption information into Addon, or alternatively use Avalara's cert capture system to store that info along with images of the exemption certificates. Cert capture will pass exemption information over to the AvaTax service, and can also be set up with other functionality like alerting you and or your customers when exemptions are expiring and need to be renewed. So how does it all work? It's really quite seamless and won't interrupt your workflow at all. Both order and invoice entry call out to AvaTax as you finish or change an order, and AvaTax returns the calculated amount directly into the sales tax field. The user doesn't have to do anything special to invoke the AvaTax interface. If you're dealing with exempt customers, order and invoice entry will also update that information if anything has changed. As you create orders, AvaTax calculates and returns the tax but they don't store those transactions for orders or for quotes. When you invoice an order, then, the tax is recalculated, and that is stored as an uncommitted transaction. You can log on to AvaTax and see those transactions. And then, when you run the sales register and update, Addon tells AvaTax to commit those transactions, at which point they can no longer be changed, and at that time, Addon will also store the JSON response from Avalara that details the complete transaction. Outside of the normal day-to-day processing, you can also turn on logging, which is handy if you need to do any sort of troubleshooting with transactions or connections. There's also a form where you can look through individually or query those JSON responses. And of course, you can log on to Avalara to view transactions and generate a variety of reports. All right, let's take a few minutes to generate a couple of invoices and see how all of this works. To set the stage, I'll jump in quick to the Sales Tax Service Parameters form. Here we can see our AvaTax connection configuration. I'll click the Test Connection button just to make sure we're ready to go. All right, looks like our connection was successful. I'm going to go directly into invoice entry and set up an invoice. Let's use customer 3000. In this first example, we'll let the ship to be the same as the bill to address, which is California in this case. And we'll order a couple items. I'm going to save. And we're done. Let's say that we want to start a new order. We are prompted to check the discount and freight amount before we leave this record. That's standard in Addon. So once I focus on the Totals tab, we can see we already have a tax amount. The user didn't need to do anything extra operationally. Now at this point, the tax could change if we alter or add discount and freight. I'm going to add a $5 freight charge. And note that the tax didn't change. Now, I happen to have read to the end of the book. I have the answer key, so I know that freight isn't taxed for this particular ship-to address. Let's do another one. Same customer. This time we'll put in a manual ship-to address. I'm ordering the same items that I did the last time, just so that we can compare. I'll save. And once again, we see that the tax amount is already there. Let's put that $5 of freight in, and notice the tax amount is now going to change. Now we've logged in to Avalara, and we can take a look at our transactions. Here are the two uncommitted invoices that we just created. Looking at the line items, you can see all of the various jurisdictions involved in calculating tax for this item. And we can also see that for our California order, the freight was not taxed, compared to the Washington transaction, where we did incur a little bit of additional tax when we added on the freight. These tax amounts will match what you see if you look at the invoice in Addon. And you can see there are also a couple of committed transactions here. So these have been through the sales register update and will appear on tax-related reports. If we go to the reports link, there are several categories of reports to choose from, and within each category, several different reports. So you can generate these on screen or download them. Okay, coming back to Addon, we can take a look at the sales tax transaction history form in the period end processing menu. These records correspond to the committed transactions, and they're retained indefinitely. This JSON text has all of that information about individual line items, all the jurisdictions, all of the details about that tax transaction. And there is a full text index set up on this JSON text field to aid in searching. But wait. Brand new for version 22, we've enhanced Addon's version 6 hybrid product so that it too interfaces with AvaTax. I want to show you how that works. First of all, in case you're not familiar with it, what is the V6 hybrid? In short, it's a copy of legacy Addon version 6. That's a CUI version of Addon, a character version. That can be installed and synced into Barista to run right alongside the current version of Addon. In this mode, both the V6 CUI screens and the Addon forms get launched from a single integrated menu and run in the Barista MDI. Given this environment, the V6 CUI screens can take advantage of graphical functionality such as queries, Jasper reports, and the graphical dashboard. The real benefit of this hybrid approach, though, is that it facilitates stepwise migration from CUI to GUI. Out of the box, the V6 hybrid runs accounts payable and general ledger in the current version of Addon, while the other modules, order processing, purchasing, and so on, run in version 6. This is a great way to go if a customer isn't in the position to migrate to GUI in a single leap. We'll learn more about hybrid solutions in a later session because they can provide a migration path for any BBX or BBJ character app, not just for Addon. So how does the AvaTax interface work in this environment? Well, here's the 50,000-foot view. We use triggers on several V6 files, mostly code and master files, so that whenever a record is written to a V6 file, it's also updated in the Addon counterpart. Then, we give users pared-down access to those Addon tables through a series of mini-forms, so that they can enter just the remaining configuration data that's required for AvaTax. Finally, we've customized several V6 invoice entry programs. The basic idea here is that as an invoice is saved in V6, we also temporarily write some of that data to the Addon files so that we can use our custom class that calculates the tax without having to rewrite it to match the V6 file structure. Once the invoice moves off to history in V6, then we can delete the temporary data from the Addon side. Just like in Addon, once things are configured, the interface to AvaTax is transparent to the user. Let's move then through a quick demo of how the AvaTax interface works in a V6 hybrid environment. On the surface, this looks like regular Addon, but it is in fact a hybrid. Accounts payable and general ledger run in the current version of Addon, as you can see here when I launch a couple of forms. The remaining modules run in version 6 using a character interface, as you can see here when I launch the customer screen. As mentioned a minute ago, to implement the AvaTax interface here in the hybrid, we added after-write triggers for several version 6 files. That means, for example, that if I make a change here to my customer, once I save it, the updated customer info is also written to the Addon customer table. Now, since the AvaTax interface meant having to add some new fields in Addon tables that aren't in their version 6 counterparts, the V6 hybrid also includes several new forms, what I referred to as mini-forms earlier, that let the users display and maintain that additional configuration data. And those are all here in this new AvaTax interface menu. Here's the main configuration form that lets you set up your AvaTax account and test your connection. And we can look at a couple of these others. We have a pared-down version of the order processing parameters to turn on the service. Here we can assign the AvaTax service codes for our designated item category. We can set which of our add-on tax codes are using the tax service, and so on. Okay, with the AvaTax interface configured, on the surface we use invoice entry, the same as always. I'm here in the invoice entry screen just at the point where I've finished entering my line items. I'll go from here to the totals screen where I can enter some freight, and then this customized version makes a temporary copy of the invoice over an add-on and uses the add-on custom class to call out to AvaTax, which returns our calculated tax, updates the invoice with that amount, and creates a transaction on the Avalara system. So pulling this all together then, the after-write triggers, in combination with the new mini forms and the customizations in a handful of these version 6 invoicing programs, make it possible to configure and use the AvaTax interface in the V6 hybrid environment without having to write a new version of the interface code, and more importantly, without having to make structural changes in version 6 tables and with minimal changes to version 6 program code. That was pretty painless, wasn't it? The integration you've just seen is certified by Avalara. That means we had to review the integration with them and satisfy all of the items on their checklist. So rather than hiring additional staff, customizing your own solution, or turning a blind eye to the Nexus laws in hopes that you'll stay under the radar, you can use Addon's integration with AvaTax and know that tax is accurately calculated and that you won't have to sweat an audit, and you'll have what you need to file your tax documents. And don't forget, if you're working your way into GUI from CUI, the Avalara AvaTax interface is now also available in the Addon V6 hybrid. This session features an end-to-end look at Addon's mobile app for counting inventory. The mobile app lets you do your physical inventory counting with a mobile device, on or offline, with Addon at the back end. It's the first of several mobile apps that we have planned for Addon. You can look forward to mobile apps for sales order picking and purchase order receiving in future releases. The mobile app streamlines the counting process for everyone involved and improves efficiency and accuracy in the process. Rather than having to print and distribute count sheets, and then when counting is done, collect and decipher them, then manually entered what's been recorded, with the new app, counters simply select and enter counts on a mobile device. And when finished, the counts are updated in Addon, eliminating the most time-consuming and error-prone steps. You've heard about this app in other presentations where we focused mostly on the technical aspects. It's developed using Google's Flutter framework, which is nice because it's free, open source, and lets you create multi-platform apps with one code base. The app also uses Barista's business component classes, which give you a RESTful web service interface to Barista-defined tables. You'll hear more about all of that in the app building blocks session. And as I mentioned earlier, you can do your counting offline. You only need a connection at the beginning and end of the process. In terms of the application itself, users log onto the app with the same username and password they'd use for other Addon tasks, and they're logged into the firm that's associated with their user account. Once in the app, users can of course switch firms if they need to. The app shows lots and serial numbers for counting, as well as items that aren't lotted or serialized, and if a user happens across an item with a lot or serial number that isn't listed, it can be added. One really nice feature of the mobile app is that it allows users to stop and then resume counting without losing any previously entered counts. It's also flexible in terms of how counts are entered, accepting either a single quantity or a count string, as might be the case if a user is counting items in individual bins or on different shelves. And users can always revisit an item to review or edit quantities. The workflow between Addon, running on the server or backend, and the mobile devices is pretty straightforward. As has always been the case, an Addon user needs to select one or more inventory cycles to freeze. That process builds a file containing the items from the selected cycles, including the associated lot or serial numbers if applicable, and the current counts known to the system. When a mobile user then logs into the counting app, they can see the selected cycles and load the cycle they want to count. Now at this point, the mobile device does need a server connection to pull in the items for the cycle and send back a change to the status flag, which takes that cycle out of commission for any other counters. Now counting can begin, whether on or offline. There are a few options to choose from when done counting. The first, deselecting a cycle, is there in case the user selected the wrong cycle or for whatever other reason wants to just cancel what they've done. Nothing they've counted is retained, and the cycle is thrown back into the hopper for other users to grab and count. Updating a cycle will send anything counted so far back to the server and also make the cycle available to others. So this would be the choice if a user is logging out for a break or there's a shift change, and the same or different user will be going back in to finish the cycle. Finally, Finishing the cycle means the user is done. All the counting is done. This also sends counts back to the server, but now the cycle is off the table for anyone else to count. After a cycle is finished, then, an add-on user can run the register and update, and life goes on. Here we have a graphical representation of the workflow I just described. Main points again being that for the actual counting, you don't need to be online, and that the deselect throws away any changes, while the update and finish send counts back to the server, with the finish taking the cycle off the table for further counting. I have a mobile app installed on my phone and have a cloud server all set up with Addon. So let's see how this all actually works. Our workflow showed that we start an add-on. So we're here in Physical Inventory menu, and I'll launch the Select Cycles for Freeze task. I'll enter Warehouse 1, and let's choose cycles B and C. This is the process that builds the table that the mobile app uses. I'm going to jump to Enterprise Manager here for a sec to show you what that looks like. IVE Physical is the name of the table. It's now been populated with the items, and here are a couple of lots for the warehouse and cycles we selected. We can see what the system says we have, and you can see there's nothing entered as yet for the actual counts. With a couple of cycles ready to count, we can launch the mobile app. Once I log in, I see my active firm. If I need to change that, I can do it via the settings page. I'll head on into inventory counting. These options should look familiar based on the workflow I described. The first thing to do is load a cycle, and here we'll see the cycles available for counting. Again, available means it's a cycle that someone on the server has selected for freeze and one that isn't already being counted. In other words, as soon as I load the cycle I want to start counting, the mobile app updates a status flag on the server so that the warehouse cycle combo won't appear for other mobile users. Okay, cycle is loaded, so we can start counting. Tap an item. I'll start with item 1000. And incidentally, the app also works with a device that can scan a barcode. Enter the quantity and tap OK. The count shows here at the right. I'll move up here to allotted item. It shows me the number of known lots. I'll select it, then pick my lot, and enter the count. I'll use a count string this time. So you get the idea how the counting works. Very easy. Back to the menu. If I were to deselect the cycle at this point, the counts I've entered thus far would be thrown out, and the server would be updated to make that cycle available to load again. It's probably not too likely someone would need to deselect after actually starting to count. The more common use case is that I pick a cycle, and when I get to the screen showing the items, I realize that wasn't the cycle I wanted. I'm going to tap Update. That sends what I've counted over to the server, and also updates the status flag so the cycle is available for someone else to count. I can now go on break, and then pick up where I left off, or maybe hand off to a coworker who's going to finish this cycle. I'll load the same cycle again, and here are my counts, so I can resume. I'm done counting this cycle, so this time I'll tap Finish. The app lets me know if there are any items I didn't count at all. I can cancel if I've just missed some items and need to go back to do some more counting. I can opt to leave the items as untouched, or set the counts to 0. The finish process sends counts back to the server, but unlike the update, it doesn't make the cycle available anymore. I'll log out, and now we can go back to Addon. Our mobile app means I can skip printing count sheets and doing physical count entry from those sheets. My counts are already in the system, so we can run the register and update as we always have. Now here too, we can decide how to treat any untouched items. Checking the 0 count quantity box will set them to 0. Otherwise, items that are untouched, for which no count was entered at all, will default to the system quantity. My register shows the items, system count, actual count, and any variance. We've shown you an end-to-end look at physical inventory counting using the new mobile app. It's a nice example of some of our newer technology, using the REST Bridge plugin with Barista's BC classes to serve up the data. The interface is easy to use. It doesn't require you to be online while counting, lets you stop and resume counting, and so on. We've eliminated the manual and most error-prone aspects of the task, gaining efficiency and accuracy in the process. We'll be able to harvest some aspects of this app to create new mobile apps in upcoming releases, planned for sales order picking and purchase order receiving. All right, we covered several topics in this session. To recap, you saw the new Git-based model for doing add-on installs, customizations, and upgrades, and learned how it not only eliminates the pitfalls of the older mods project model, but also gives you all the advantage of version control with Git. Then we talked a bit more about the new Packager Extractor utility, its role in doing add-on upgrades, as well as how you can use it any other time that you need to copy or relocate an instance of Barista add-on. We saw how add-ons certified integration with Avalara's AvaTax service can relieve you of the hassle and worry of having to keep up with those ever-changing nexus laws. And we took a fresh look at the mobile inventory counting application for add-on and how it improves accuracy and efficiency.